Every family has secrets. Some are harmless. Some are devastating. For Mark, one discovery would shatter everything he thought he knew about love, loyalty, and home. Mark grew up in a house that looked ordinary from the outside. A small white home with a blue door, a garden his mother tended, and a driveway where his father's old sedan always parked late after long shifts at work. Neighbors envied them. To the outside world, they were the picture of stability. A hardworking father, a devoted mother, and an uncle who seemed more like a second parent than a relative. Mark's father, Daniel, was quiet but steady. He worked long hours at a factory, rarely complained, and carried the weight of responsibility like a badge of honor. His mother, Elena, was the warmth of the household. She filled the home with smells of fresh bread, with laughter that carried through the halls, with arms always ready for a hug. And then there was Uncle David, Daniel's younger brother. He was different, charming, magnetic, quick with a smile or a joke. He often dropped by unannounced, but no one minded. His presence felt natural. He belonged. For Mark, this was the anchor of life. He trusted them completely. Childhood memories were a collage of his uncle teaching him how to fish, his mother bandaging scraped knees, his father ruffling his hair after a long day of work. Together, they were unbreakable. Or so he believed. Before we dive deeper into this story, if you enjoy content like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who loves a good story. It really helps the channel grow and keeps us bringing you more tales like this one. Now, let's get into it. The first signs were too subtle for anyone else to notice. His father worked too much to see them. But Mark, at 16, was old enough to pay attention. And once he noticed, he couldn't unsee it. It began with whispers. His mother taking phone calls late at night, her voice low and urgent. Sometimes he caught fragments, soft laughter, words that didn't sound like casual conversation. When she noticed him nearby, she would hang up quickly, smile too wide, and tell him it was just a friend. Then there were the glances. At family dinners, his mother's eyes met his uncle's just a moment too long. A touch on the shoulder that lingered. A silence stretched out like a hidden language only the two of them understood. At first, Mark doubted himself. Maybe he was imagining it. Maybe he was being unfair. But the unease grew each time. It sat heavy in his chest, a suspicion he couldn't shake. And then came the night that stripped away every illusion. It was late, and Mark was searching for an old photo album for a school project. His mother kept boxes in the back of her closet, and he thought he'd find it there. He pulled down one box after another, flipping through old clothes, faded pictures, yellowed letters. But in the far back, behind a stack of blankets, he found a box he'd never seen before. It was heavier. The lid resisted when he tried to open it, as if it wasn't meant to be touched. But curiosity pushed him. He pried it open. Inside were letters. Dozens of them, folded carefully, tied with a ribbon. His hands shook as he opened the first one. The handwriting was his uncle's. I can't stop thinking about last night. About the way you looked at me, the way you whispered my name. Every moment with you feels like fire. Mark froze. His stomach twisted. He read further. Words of passion. Of love. Of secrecy. And then, replies, in his mother's handwriting. Equally intimate. Equally undeniable. Beside the letters were photographs. Not family photos. These were different. His mother and uncle together. Smiling too closely. Arms wrapped around each other in ways no siblings-in-law should be. Mark dropped the photo. His chest pounded so hard it hurt. His throat closed. His vision blurred with tears. In that moment, his world shattered. His mother. His uncle. The two people he trusted most. They had betrayed his father. And worse, they had betrayed him. Mark sat frozen in the dark, the letters scattered around him like broken glass. The photographs stared back, sharp and undeniable. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tear them to pieces and burn them. But he couldn't move. His body was trembling, his heart racing, his thoughts spinning. After what felt like hours, he shoved everything back into the box, pressed the lid down tight, and returned it to its place in the closet. He knew he should put it all back the way he found it, but his hands shook so badly he wasn't sure it looked the same. His chest ached as he left the room, each step heavy, as if the house itself was pressing down on him. That night, sleep never came. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the words. The photos. His mother's handwriting curling into confessions. His uncle's smirk pressed against her face. He stared at the ceiling until morning, his world split open. The next day at breakfast, everything looked normal. His mother hummed while making eggs, setting a plate in front of his father with the same easy smile as always. His father thanked her, tired but grateful, reaching over to squeeze her hand before eating. Mark stared, his throat dry. He couldn't touch his food. When his uncle arrived later that afternoon, carrying a bag of groceries like he always did, Mark's stomach flipped. His uncle laughed, patted him on the shoulder, and asked, "How's school, kid?" Mark forced a smile, but the words stuck. He wanted to shout at him. He wanted to grab his father and point, scream, "Look! Look at them!" But he couldn't. His father was smiling, glad to see his brother, glad to have help around the house. His father had no idea. Dinner that evening was unbearable. His father cracked jokes about work, his mother laughed, and his uncle poured wine as if nothing in the world was wrong. Mark sat silent, stabbing at his food, fighting the urge to stand up and flip the table. Every laugh sounded fake. Every smile cut deep. Later, alone in his room, Mark buried his face in his hands. The secret sat heavy in his chest, a weight pressing harder every hour. He knew things could never be the same, but what could he do? If he told, he'd destroy his father. If he stayed silent, the truth would rot him from the inside. Days turned into weeks, and Mark carried the secret like a shadow. Everywhere he went, it followed. At school, he couldn't focus. His friends joked and laughed, but his mind wandered back to the letters. During basketball practice, he missed easy shots, earning stares from his coach. At night, sleep rarely came. Every interaction with his mother was tense. She'd call him for dinner, her voice warm, but he heard betrayal in every syllable. She'd kiss his cheek goodnight, and his skin would crawl. Once, she asked, "You all right, Mark? You've seemed distant lately." Her eyes studied him, sharp, searching. For a moment, he thought she knew. He forced a smile and muttered something about being tired. But her gaze lingered, too long, too knowing. His uncle noticed too. "You've been quiet lately," David said one evening while helping Mark fix a flat tire on his bike. "Something on your mind?" His tone was casual, but his eyes flicked up sharply, probing. Mark swallowed hard, his throat dry. "Just school," he lied. David held his stare for a long moment, then smiled and clapped him on the back. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. The breaking point nearly came one weekend at a family barbecue. Neighbors filled the yard, laughter and music in the air. His father was at the grill, flipping burgers, proud to play host. His mother carried trays of food, her smile dazzling as always. And his uncle charmed everyone, cracking jokes, topping off drinks. To anyone watching, it was perfect. But to Mark, it was a nightmare. Every glance between his mother and uncle was like a knife. Every laugh they shared felt like proof of the letters burning in his memory. At one point, his father raised a glass and called for everyone's attention. "I just want to say something," he said, smiling wide. "Life isn't easy, but I don't know what I'd do without my family. Elena, you've been my rock. And David," he looked at his brother, eyes shining with gratitude. "You've been my right hand. I'm lucky to have the two of you." Everyone cheered. Mark's stomach lurched. He wanted to vomit. He wanted to stand and scream the truth. His hands clenched into fists under the table. The words hovered on his lips. But when he looked at his father, his tired, proud, smiling father, he couldn't do it. His throat closed. He stayed silent. His uncle caught his eye across the table. Their gazes locked for a second too long. And in his uncle's faint smirk, Mark thought he saw something chilling, not guilt, not shame, but triumph. Later that night, after the guests left and the house grew quiet, his father came into his room. He sat on the edge of Mark's bed, tired but smiling. "You know, son," he said, "people out there will hurt you. Friends, strangers, the world, it'll knock you down. But family? Family never will. Family is all we've got." Mark stared at him, his chest aching. His father's eyes were so full of trust, so sure. Mark wanted to scream, "You're wrong. They already have. The people you love most are the ones who destroyed us." But the words stuck. His lips trembled. He nodded instead, forcing a smile, swallowing tears. That night, his father's words echoed in his head. Family never will. But Mark knew better now. Family already had. Mark's silence became a prison. Every day he walked through his house feeling like an intruder in his own life. His father remained blind, his mother wore her practiced smile, and his uncle slipped in and out as if he owned the place. But beneath the surface, the air was charged. Thick. Watching. One evening, Mark lingered in the kitchen, pouring himself a glass of water. His mother came in quietly, her footsteps soft against the tiled floor. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying him. "You've been quiet," she said. Mark's grip tightened on the glass. "I'm fine." Her head tilted. "No, you're not. You hardly talk anymore. You barely eat. Is something going on at school?" He shook his head, staring at the sink. "Mark," she said softly, stepping closer. "You know you can tell me anything, right?" The word stabbed at him. Anything? He wanted to shout. He wanted to slam the truth in her face. Instead, he muttered, "I'm fine," and moved toward the door. Her hand brushed his arm, light, almost hesitant. "If you ever find something you're not ready for, some things are better left alone." Mark froze. His heart pounded. He turned slowly, but her expression was unreadable. She smiled faintly, patted his arm, and walked past him to the fridge. He stood rooted in place, his mind spinning. Did she know? Was she warning him? Or was it just another lie wrapped in sweetness? A few days later, Mark was in the garage, looking for a wrench to fix his bike. His uncle walked in, shutting the door behind him with a quiet thud. "Hey, kid," David said, his tone casual. He leaned against the workbench, watching him. "Haven't seen you around much. You avoiding me?" Mark's pulse quickened. He forced himself to keep searching through the toolbox. "Just busy." "Busy," David repeated, like he was tasting the word. "You know, I've always thought you were sharp. Smarter than most kids your age. You notice things. Pick up on things others miss." Mark froze. His uncle's voice was calm, but there was something beneath it. A weight. A warning. David stepped closer, lowering his voice. "But sometimes, noticing too much can get complicated. Do you understand?" Mark's throat went dry. He nodded quickly, refusing to meet his uncle's eyes. David smiled, clapped him on the back, and walked out of the garage. "Good talk," he said cheerfully, leaving Mark shaken to his core. At school, the secret bled into his life. During history class, his teacher asked him a question, but he didn't hear it. When she repeated it, he stammered, face burning as the class laughed. At lunch, his best friend Chris nudged him. "You've been out of it, man. What's going on?" Mark shook his head. "Nothing." Chris frowned. "Come on. You can tell me." For a split second, Mark almost did. The words hovered at the edge of his tongue. "My mom is having an affair with my uncle." but as soon as he pictured saying it, shame and dread smothered him. How could anyone understand? How could anyone believe him without proof? And even if they did, what then? Just tired, Mark muttered. Chris gave him a skeptical look, but let it go. Mark turned away, staring at the cafeteria crowd, wishing he could vanish into it and forget everything he knew. One night, Mark woke thirsty and went downstairs for water. As he passed the living room, he noticed something on the coffee table. A photograph. He stopped, staring at it. It was an old family picture. His father, smiling wide. His mother, leaning into his side. And David, standing behind them with his hand resting on Elena's shoulder. It should have been ordinary. But in the photo, Elena wasn't looking at Daniel. She was looking at David. Her eyes softened, her smile warmer, more alive. Mark's chest tightened. He reached for the photo, but as his fingers touched the edge, his father's voice came from the staircase. Couldn't sleep either. Mark jolted, nearly dropping the picture. He turned to see his father descending, rubbing his eyes. Yeah, Mark said quickly, setting the photo back down. Just thirsty. His father chuckled. Me too. He poured himself a glass of milk, oblivious to the storm raging inside his son. Mark stared at him, his throat aching. He wanted to tell him. He wanted to shout the truth before it crushed him alive. But then his father said, "You're a good kid, Mark. I'm proud of you. Don't ever forget that." And just like that, the words died in his mouth. Another evening, Mark sat at the dinner table, barely touching his food. His mother was talking about errands, his father was complaining about work, and David was telling a story that had everyone laughing, except Mark. Suddenly, without thinking, Mark blurted, "Why are you always here?" The table fell silent. His mother's fork froze halfway to her mouth. His uncle raised his eyebrows, tilting his head. His father frowned. "What do you mean, son?" his father asked. Mark's face burned. "I just mean, Uncle David's here all the time. Don't you have other places to be?" David chuckled lightly, breaking the tension. "What can I say? I like being around family." His father nodded approvingly. "And we're glad to have him." Elena's eyes, though, stayed fixed on Mark. Sharp. Piercing. She said nothing, but the message in her stare was clear: be careful. The walls of the house felt closer each day. Every sound made Mark jump. Every glance carried hidden meaning. His mother's questions, his uncle's casual remarks, his father's trust, it all pressed in, squeezing tighter. He thought about the box in the closet constantly. The letters. The photos. Proof of everything. Sometimes he wanted to take them, show them to his father, end it once and for all. But other times, he wanted to burn them, erase them, pretend he had never seen them. Either choice felt like a death sentence. The silence was killing Mark. Days blurred into each other, each one heavier than the last. His father's smiles felt sharper, crueler in their innocence. His mother's warmth burned him like fire. And his uncle's laughter echoed in his head long after he left the house. The secret wasn't just in the box anymore. It lived inside him. It twisted his thoughts, it poisoned his sleep, it filled the air of every room he walked into. And Mark knew he couldn't carry it forever. Something had to give. One Saturday, Mark was in his parents' room, pretending to look for a book his mother had borrowed. Really, he was checking the box again, making sure it was still there, making sure the letters hadn't disappeared. He pulled the closet door open, his hands trembling as he reached toward the back corner. The box was there. Untouched. His breath hitched with both relief and dread. He slid it toward him and opened the lid just a crack, just enough to see the letters still bundled together, the photographs stacked beneath. Suddenly, footsteps echoed in the hallway. His mother's voice called, "Mark? What are you doing in there?" Panic surged through him. He shoved the box back into place, heart pounding. The footsteps grew louder. He closed the closet door and grabbed a random book off the shelf, turning just as his mother entered. She looked at him with curious eyes. "What are you doing in our room?" He lifted the book weakly. "Just looking for this." Her eyes flicked to the closet, then back to him. The silence stretched. For a terrifying moment, he thought she would walk over, open the closet, and see everything disturbed. But instead, she smiled. "Too sweet. Too calm. You should ask before coming in here," she said softly. Mark nodded quickly, brushing past her with the book clutched tight. But as he left, he felt her eyes on him, burning holes in his back. That night, dinner was unbearable. His father laughed at something David said, his mother chimed in, and the whole table felt like a stage play Mark had been forced into. Finally, unable to hold it in, he slammed his fork onto the table. "Can we just stop pretending?" The room went silent. His father frowned, confused. "Pretending? Pretending what?" Mark's chest heaved. His eyes darted to his mother, then to his uncle. Both sat frozen, their expressions carefully neutral. "Nothing," Mark muttered after a long pause. He pushed back his chair and stormed upstairs. Behind him, he heard his father sigh heavily, his mother saying something under her breath, and his uncle's low chuckle. That night, Mark couldn't take it anymore. He sat at his desk, staring at a blank sheet of paper. His hands shook as he picked up a pen. He began to write. At first, the words came slowly, then faster. His anger, his pain, his fear, all of it spilled onto the page. He wrote about the letters he had found, about the photographs, about the affair that had poisoned his childhood. He wrote about his father, the man working himself to the bone for a family that wasn't real. By the time he finished, the paper was filled with his confession. His truth. His proof. He folded it, sealed it in an envelope, and stared at it for hours. His mind raced with questions. Should he give it to his father? Leave it somewhere it would be found? Hide it until he was ready? The envelope sat on his desk like a live wire, humming with danger. The next morning, the envelope was gone. Mark tore apart his desk. He pulled out every drawer, ripped through every notebook, checked under the bed, the closet, the trash can. Nothing. His chest tightened. His hands shook. He searched the entire room again. Still nothing. Someone had taken it. At breakfast, he sat pale and silent. His father read the newspaper, sipping coffee, oblivious. His mother moved around the kitchen calmly, but her eyes flicked toward him once, sharp and knowing. His uncle sat at the table, scrolling through his phone, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. Mark's stomach turned. Who had it? His father? His mother? His uncle? And if they had read it, what would they do? The house grew heavier after that. Conversations were shorter. Smiles tighter. Every glance between his mother and uncle carried new tension. One evening, his father mentioned casually, "I was in your room earlier looking for tape. You should clean that desk, it's a mess." Mark froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Did his father see the letter? If he did, why hadn't he said anything? Later, as Mark passed the living room, he overheard his mother on the phone. Her voice was sharp, angry. "He's not stupid. He's seen too much. We need to be careful." Mark's blood ran cold. He pressed his back against the wall, straining to hear more, but her voice dropped to a whisper. He caught only fragments. "Don't let him slip. Daniel can't know, not yet." When the call ended, he barely made it to his room before his legs gave out. He sat on the floor, shaking. His mother knew. His uncle knew. And they were watching him. Days later, Mark was heading to the garage when his uncle followed him inside, shutting the door behind them. David leaned against the wall, his smile thin. "You know, Mark, families are complicated. Sometimes people make mistakes. Sometimes it's better to leave things as they are." Mark glared at him. Better for who? David chuckled softly, stepping closer. For everyone. You don't want to hurt your father, do you? Mark's hands curled into fists. His uncle's voice was calm, but his eyes were hard, unblinking. Besides, David added, his tone dropping lower, you wouldn't want anyone thinking you were making things up. Imagine how that would look. A boy accusing his own family. Mark's chest tightened. He wanted to scream, to hit him, to do something. But fear rooted him in place. David clapped him lightly on the shoulder, the touch sending a chill down Mark's spine. Good kid, he said, before walking away. Mark stood frozen long after he left, his breath shaking. Mark wasn't sleeping anymore. He would lie in bed at night, staring at the ceiling, waiting for footsteps outside his door. Waiting for someone to come in and demand to know what he'd done. Or worse. The missing letter haunted him. He imagined his father reading it, sitting alone, heartbreaking in silence. He imagined his mother burning it, her calm smile hiding the truth. He imagined his uncle holding it like a weapon, waiting for the perfect time to strike. Every possibility left him paralyzed. One rainy afternoon, Mark came home from school to find the house quiet. His father's car wasn't in the driveway. His mother's shoes weren't by the door. The silence was heavy. He dropped his backpack and wandered into the kitchen. On the counter sat a mug of coffee, half finished, still warm. And next to it, a folded scrap of paper. Mark's chest tightened. Slowly, he unfolded it. The handwriting was his mother's. You need to make him stop asking questions. He's not a child anymore. If Daniel finds out, everything is over. Mark's breath caught. His hands trembled. The note wasn't signed, but he knew who it was meant for. Before he could think, the front door creaked open. He shoved the note into his pocket and darted up the stairs, heart hammering. He closed his bedroom door just as he heard his mother's voice call out, "Mark? Are you home?" He didn't answer. Later that night, his father came into his room. He sat on the edge of Mark's bed, his face tired but thoughtful. You've been distant, Daniel said softly. I know being a teenager isn't easy, but I want you to know you can trust me. With anything. Mark stared at him, his throat aching. The words clawed at him, desperate to be spoken, Mom and Uncle David. They've been lying to you for years. But then he saw the lines on his father's face, the exhaustion in his eyes. The man who had worked himself to the bone just to keep the family together. Could he really shatter him with the truth? Daniel sighed, patting his son's shoulder. Whatever it is, we'll get through it together. Just promise me you'll be honest. Mark nodded weakly, but said nothing. When his father left the room, Mark buried his face in his pillow, silently screaming. A week later, the storm finally broke. Mark walked into the living room to find his mother and uncle whispering in hushed tones. They froze when they saw him. His mother forced a smile. Mark, sweetheart, we were just talking about me. Mark cut in, his voice sharp. His uncle chuckled nervously. Don't be dramatic. Mark's eyes burned. I know everything. The room went still. His mother's face drained of color. His uncle's smile vanished. You don't know what you're saying, his mother whispered. Yes, I do. Mark shouted. His voice cracked, but he pressed on. The letters. The photos. The trips. The note in the kitchen. You've been lying to him. To all of us. His mother's eyes filled with tears. His uncle stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Careful, Mark. Words like that can destroy families. They already did, Mark snapped. At that moment, the front door opened. His father walked in, setting down his briefcase. He looked between them, frowning. What's going on here? Mark's chest tightened. This was it. The moment. His father stood in the doorway, confusion turning to concern. His mother wiped her eyes quickly, trying to compose herself. His uncle slipped a hand into his pocket, expression unreadable. Mark opened his mouth. The truth sat on the edge of his tongue, sharp and burning. He could say it. He could end the lies. He could set everything on fire. But he hesitated. His father looked at him, waiting. Mark? The room pulsed with silence. His mother's eyes begged him not to. His uncle's stare warned him not to. His father's trust pleaded with him to speak. Mark's chest heaved. He felt the weight of every secret, every lie, every scar. He took a step forward. And then stopped. The words tangled in his throat. His hands shook. He couldn't tell if he was protecting his father or protecting himself. That night, Mark lay awake, staring into the darkness. The letter was still gone. The note still burned in his pocket. The truth still sat heavy in his chest. But nothing had changed. Not yet. And he realized, with a hollow ache, that the story wasn't over. Not for him. Not for his family. Because secrets like these don't stay buried forever. The only question left was, when they finally came to light, who would survive the fallout? The days after the confrontation were suffocating. No one mentioned it, not even his father, though Mark was sure he had felt the tension in the room that night. The silence was worse than shouting. It hung over the family like a storm cloud that refused to break. At school, Mark couldn't keep the weight of it from bleeding into his life. His grades slipped. He stared out of windows instead of paying attention. He flinched when classmates laughed, convinced they were laughing at him. One afternoon, his history teacher, Mrs. Carter, stopped him as the class emptied out. "Mark, word." He shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes. "You've been distracted," she said gently. "And I don't mean a little. You're somewhere else. Is everything okay at home?" The words hit him like a slap. He froze, staring at her, his throat tight. For a moment, he wanted to spill everything, just hand the burden to someone who wasn't trapped in the web. But fear clenched him like a fist. "I'm fine," he mumbled. Mrs. Carter studied him for a long moment, then sighed. "If you ever want to talk, my door's open." Mark nodded, but walked away quickly, his stomach churning. The secret was leaking out of him, even when he tried to hide it. One Saturday, Mark was in the driveway fixing his bike when their neighbor, Mrs. Lewis, stopped by. She was an older woman, friendly, always gossiping. She smiled warmly at him. "Your uncle's been around a lot lately, hasn't he?" Mark stiffened, his hands freezing on the handlebars. Mrs. Lewis chuckled. "Not that I blame your mother. Having family close by is a blessing. Still, sometimes I wonder if your father minds." She winked and carried on down the street, leaving Mark pale and trembling. If the neighbors noticed, how long before his father did? One evening, while his father was in the shower, Mark wandered into his office. On the desk was a leather-bound journal. Mark hesitated, then flipped it open. Most of it was filled with work notes and schedules, but one entry caught his eye. It was written just a few days ago. "Something feels off. Elena and David whisper too much. Mark is distant. I don't know what's happening, but I feel like I'm missing something important." Mark's breath caught. His father knew something. Maybe not the truth, but he felt the cracks. Mark wanted to add his own confession into those pages. To write the truth where his father would find it. But fear rooted him to the spot. He closed the journal and slipped out of the room before the shower turned off. That night, Mark checked the closet again. His heart nearly stopped. The box was gone. Panic surged through him. He tore through the closet, through the room, searching everywhere. Nothing. The next morning, it was back. In the exact spot he'd left it. But when he opened it, one photograph was missing. His hands shook as he closed the lid. Someone had taken it. Someone had put it back. And now someone held a piece of evidence he couldn't trace. Mark's sleep grew restless. One night, he dreamed he walked into the kitchen to find his father sitting at the table with the box open in front of him. His father's face was blank, unreadable. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel asked. Mark tried to speak, but his mouth wouldn't move. His mother and uncle stood in the doorway, smiling faintly, their eyes dark. When Mark woke, his pillow was wet with tears. The breaking point came one evening when his father sat beside him on the couch, watching TV. The show flickered across the screen, but neither of them was paying attention. "Mark," Daniel said quietly. "You know I love you, right?" Mark nodded, swallowing hard. "And I trust you." His father's voice cracked slightly. "If something's wrong, anything at all, I need you to tell me." Mark's chest ached. His eyes stung. The words pushed at his lips. "Mom and Uncle David are betraying you. They've been lying to you for years." But then he saw his father's tired eyes, the fragile hope in them. And once again, the words died. "Nothing's wrong," Mark whispered. His father sighed, pulling him into a hug. Mark buried his face in his father's shoulder, silently screaming. A week later, Mark found the missing photograph. It was lying on his pillow when he came home from school. He stared at it, his blood running cold. The image was of his mother and uncle, close together, smiling in a way that was no longer innocent. On the back, someone had scrawled a message in jagged handwriting. "Tell him, or I will." Mark dropped the photo, his hands shaking violently. His breath came in ragged gasps. Someone else knew. Someone was pushing him. But who? His mother? His uncle? Or his father? That evening, the family sat down for dinner. His father passed him the vegetables, smiling faintly. His mother avoided his gaze. His uncle whistled softly as he served himself. Mark sat frozen, the photo burning in his pocket. His father looked at him suddenly, his expression unreadable. "Mark, there's something I've been meaning to ask you." The table fell silent. His mother's fork clinked against her plate. His uncle leaned back, watching carefully. Mark's heart thundered. Did his father know? Had the photo reached him too? Was this the moment everything finally came crashing down? But before Daniel could finish his question, the phone rang. Elena stood quickly, rushing to answer it. The spell broke. Conversation shifted. And the truth slipped away again, unspoken, unresolved. Mark lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, clutching the photo in his hands. The secret was eating them all alive. His father was suspicious. His mother was desperate. His uncle was dangerous. And now, someone else was moving pieces behind the scenes. The truth was circling closer, inevitable. But Mark still didn't know. When it finally came out, would he be the one to reveal it, or would it be ripped from the shadows by someone else? The photo with its chilling message never left Mark's side. He kept it folded in his pocket during the day and under his pillow at night. Every time he looked at it, the handwriting burned into him. "Tell him, or I will." The words weren't a threat. They were a countdown. One late evening, Mark overheard his father on the phone in his office. The door was slightly ajar, and Daniel's voice carried through the crack. "I don't know, Chris," he said. Mark realized he was talking to his co-worker. "Elena and David, they are too close. It's been bothering me for years, but lately, I can't shake the feeling something's wrong." Mark pressed his hand over his mouth, his heart pounding. Daniel's voice lowered, heavy with exhaustion. "And Mark, he knows something. He's holding back. I can see it in his eyes. But he won't tell me." Silence stretched. Then his father whispered the words Mark dreaded and longed for in equal measure. "I'm scared, Chris. Scared that I already know the truth, and I just don't want to admit it." Mark stumbled away from the door before he could hear more, his chest tight. His father knew. Maybe not the details, but enough. Enough to destroy him. A week later, Mark was walking home from school when a car slowed beside him. The window rolled down, and a man he didn't recognize leaned out. "You're Daniel's boy, right?" the man asked. His voice was low, gravelly. Mark froze, nodding slightly. The man's eyes narrowed. "Be careful what you dig up. Some truths don't just ruin families. They ruin lives." Before Mark could reply, the car pulled away, leaving him shaken on the side of the road. Who was he? How did he know? And what did he mean by ruin lives? When Daniel's birthday arrived, the family gathered around the dining table. The house was full of relatives, laughter, and chatter. For a moment, the illusion was perfect, a happy family celebrating together. But Mark couldn't focus on the cake or the candles. His eyes kept darting to his mother and uncle, sitting just a little too close. To his father, smiling but distracted. To the envelope-shaped bulge in his uncle's jacket pocket. Halfway through the evening, his father stood to make a toast. "I want to thank my family," Daniel said warmly. "For standing by me, for giving me purpose. Mark, Elena, David, you're my everything." Mark felt the words like knives. His chest tightened, his throat closing. He gripped the edge of the table, shaking. When the toast ended, his uncle leaned over, whispering so only Mark could hear, "Don't ruin this." Mark's stomach churned. He excused himself and slipped upstairs, locking himself in his room, trying not to cry. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the house was quiet, Mark returned to his room to find something on his desk. An envelope. He froze. Slowly, he picked it up. His name was written across the front in bold, familiar handwriting. Inside was the letter he had written weeks ago, the one that had disappeared. But now, beneath his own words, someone had added a message. "If you won't tell him, I will." Mark dropped the letter, his breath ragged. The photo. The letter. The threats. Someone was playing a game, and he was the pawn. That night, Mark woke to shouting downstairs. He crept to the top of the stairs, heart hammering. His father's voice thundered, "What are you hiding from me, Elena?" "I'm not hiding anything," his mother snapped back. "You and David, always whispering, always sneaking around. I'm not blind." Mark's blood froze. His father knew. He finally knew. Then David's voice cut through the chaos, calm but firm. "Daniel, you're overreacting. You're tired, you're stressed. Don't let paranoia ruin your family." Silence. Then his father's voice again, quieter, broken. "If I ever find out you're lying to me, both of you, it'll be the end." Mark hurried back to his room, his heart in his throat. The storm had broken, but not completely. Not yet. The next morning, the house was eerily calm. His father drank his coffee in silence. His mother hummed softly while cooking breakfast. His uncle read the paper as if nothing had happened. But the tension was unbearable. Mark sat at the table, staring at them. The photo and the letter burned in his pocket. The stranger's warning echoed in his head. His father's words from the night before still rang in his ears. He couldn't take it anymore. He pushed his chair back and stood. Everyone looked up. "I need to tell you something," Mark said. His voice shook, but he held their gaze. The room went still. His father's eyes narrowed. His mother's fork froze midair. His uncle's smile faltered. Mark opened his mouth. And then the screen fades to black. Some truths can set us free. Others can destroy everything we love. The only question is, when Mark finally speaks, will his family survive the truth, or be shattered by it? And that's where we leave Mark, standing on the edge of truth and silence, with his family's future hanging in the balance. What do you think? Should he expose the betrayal, or keep the secret to protect his father? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story gripped you, make sure to like the video, subscribe for more, and share it with a friend who loves these kinds of emotional twists. Until next time.